What's up, guys? Welcome back to Wedding Film 101. My name is Jason McCutcheon, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about something that is pretty important to being a wedding filmmaker, and that is storage media. And I promise you're going to learn a lot. If you have questions about storage, if you're wondering about what SD card to get or what is right for your camera, hopefully this video will help. Let's do it. So before we get into everything that you need to know and really helping you make a good choice, you need to know what some of these terms are, because every card is going to have terms on it and every single camera is going to have all these terms on it. In order to maximize it and make good choices, you got to kind of know what it means. The first term we're going to talk about is write speed, which is how fast media hits the actual SD card or whatever the media is in megabytes per second. MBS/S, you might see. It might even say 300W or 180W MBS/S. Sometimes they list it on the card, sometimes they don't, but if they list it on the card, it'll typically say W MBS. If it says R, that means it's the read speed, by the way. Speaking of read speed is the transfer rate off the card. So for instance, when you're capturing footage from a card after a wedding, putting it on your bigger hard drive back at your office, or you're just playing back footage on your camera, that is read speed. What they don't tell you is oftentimes they're only going to list one, and most likely it's the read speed, whatever one is faster. And when it comes to recording weddings, write speed is much more important than read speed. So don't just assume whatever's on the card is actually the write speed. Double check the media you're buying, what the read speed is and what the write speed is. And don't just trust what's written on this card because it's all marketing. So just because it says 290 or 300 or 250 on the card doesn't mean that it can actually write 290 or 300. Now, those are very important terms because your write speed is going to determine what you can actually record on that media. The faster the write speed, the beefier the codec, the bigger the color depth, all these things. Another term you're going to see a lot is video speed class, or V30, V60, V90, guarantees sustained write speeds of 30, 60, or 90 MBS for uninterrupted recording. Another term you might come across, which maybe isn't directly related to write and read speed or the media per se, but plays a big part into what you can put on your media, is gonna be bit depth. 8-bit color gives 16.7 million colors, and that seems like a lot until you see 10-bit color, which scales to over 1 billion colors. And I'm telling you, when you look at shadows or various other gradients that happen on camera, if you can record your wedding films 10-bit color, it makes a big difference, and it's worth getting media that allows you to do that. There is 12-bit color, but that's typically only going to be found in raw video, and I don't recommend that for weddings. It's just too big, but it's very cool. We all know what resolution is, but resolution plays a big part in media. It used to be that 1080p was really huge. Now 4K is kind of standard, and we're even getting up into 8K and more for various other cameras. Kind of the sky's the limit here. But you definitely want to make sure that any media you buy is future-proof and allows you to at least record what you want to be recording right now. And finally, a term that many of you are interacting with, but you don't really know it, which is codec. A codec is something like H.264 or H.265. These compressed codecs have the benefit of allowing you to have 10-bit color depth and very high resolution, but with small sizes, at least relatively small. Versus something like a ProRes codec or RAW, which is not something that, like I said, I recommend, but they demand a ton more bandwidth with the benefit of having even more colors and even bigger files. Either way, all this stuff shapes what media you get and really determines what your media can handle. This is a Fujifilm X-T4. This is I would consider a prosumer level camera, and it has dual record slots, dual SD cord slots to be precise, but your camera might have something different. It might have CFexpress or CFast, who knows, maybe even allows you to record to an external SSD. No matter what your camera has, you're gonna be able to shoot a wedding, so it's not that one is necessarily better than the other, because it's not like you can record just infinite size, right? It's beautiful to have a giant image, but keep in mind, you got to store all that footage. So you definitely want to work that balance between recording beautiful color and beautiful footage, but also making sure that you can actually manage the footage. With that in mind, it's not that one media type is better than the other. It's just about what your camera can handle and all the other factors. But let's talk about each one. CFexpress pushes these write speeds past 1000 MBS, and it is really built for 4K or even 8K raw workflows. You can do a lot with this media, and you're gonna see it on upper end cameras a lot. It's actually really nice, very reliable. I like it a lot. SD cards are kind of the standard. These things are hitting like 300 MBS at the upper limit, which is definitely fast enough for the vast majority of 4K settings if you choose wisely. And of course, more and more cameras have the option to record externally to an SSD, and this thing is blazing fast, like 2000 MBS. This is like cinema quality, ideal for direct recordings, high volume storage, super long days. In fact, I often record with an SSD at a wedding just so I don't have to change out cards and I have a little bit faster offload. No matter what you're recording with, whether it be CFexpress or a CFast card, which I didn't really even mention, but it's kind of like, I don't know, a crappier version of this, SD cards or even an SSD, you can shoot weddings and do a great job. So don't stress about it. I just want to get you up to speed. I don't think any of them are necessarily better. They all have trade-offs, but most of you guys, you're probably going to be using this good old-fashioned SD card. So now that we talked about each media type, let's dig a little bit more into the benefits of each one, because they all kind of have strengths and weaknesses. Each shine in its own lane. CFexpress, like I said, tackles this high data rates. Think like 10-bit, 4K 60 FPS, no hiccups, it's ready to go. SD cards, they're very versatile and super cost effective. You can get awesome cards for $99 now. And in fact, they're getting better and better. A UHS-2 V90 can manage like 10-bit 4K on most every camera at the top settings, and pretty future-proof. With all that in mind, I think SD cards are kind of that go-to for most wedding filmmakers because they have that nice mix of speed. They can, you know, record the way you want to record, but also cost, because you need a lot of storage to record weddings. So don't always go for the biggest codec, the most color depth, all that. Keep in mind, you can't bring infinite storage to weddings. And of course, we can't forget SSDs because they bring that massive capacity and that unparalleled speed, and they're perfect for long shoots and quick backups. I mean, I use all three of those forms in different weddings and in different cameras, so all of them can get the job done. It's just about what cameras you have and what's right for you. Now, like I said, there's benefits and there's also trade-offs. CFexpress costs a premium, like minimum $200 for a 512 card. And of course it's going down, but they're expensive media, they're a premium media. Now, the good thing is SD cards are much, much more affordable. But depending on what you get, you might have write speed issues. V30 is great for certain things, but it definitely can falter when you're doing those 10-bit 4K high bit rates. It triggers buffering issues. You can have files that don't write properly. I really don't recommend anything less than a V60 card if you're trying to record 4K 10-bit. Especially if you want to do 60 frames per second, you really need those increased write speeds. And of course, SSDs need power and rigging, and they only work if your camera supports the external recording, which a lot of cameras don't. Now, I think anything new, especially a little more high-end, is going to be supporting SSDs. The problem is, even if you can support it, you might not want to deal with the pain of having an SSD attached to the top of your camera, having a cable pop out the side that you can bump and break and damage all day. It's really about what you're trying to do, which is why I think most wedding filmmakers are going to be totally fine just recording on V60 and V90 SD cards. Now let's talk about what media is right for weddings. So for weddings, capacity is key. You're shooting like a 10-hour day, you're delivering, you know, a bunch of videos, but you might walk away with like 3-4 hours of footage at the end of the day. The data varies. 4K 8-bit H.264 at 100 MBS is about 45 gigs an hour. Might be 135 gigs total. 10-bit 4K at a 400 MBS on a Fujifilm X-T4, you're talking 180 gigs per hour. That's like 540 gigs of shooting for an entire day if you shoot like 3 hours of footage. Now, ProRes 4K at 600 MBS on a Sony a7S III, you're in 270 gigs per hour. That's 810 gigs. By the way, when it comes to storage capacity, sometimes I would recommend you have double the amount of storage you need, so keep that in mind. Now, if you're wondering what should I get, you could probably get away with 256 gigs. Most people are recording like 180 MBS, they're not maxing out. These are things you're gonna have to figure out for yourself. Just to put in perspective though, a 256 gigabyte SD card or CFexpress works for lighter 4K very well. you're going to get through that day easily. But, you know, if you really want to start cranking it up, maybe 512 or a 1 terabyte at 10-bit might be a better way to go. Now, an SSD, you're probably going to be good to go with that 1 terabyte, and it will manage the whole entire day. The biggest thing, though, I'll tell you is pack extras. Media does fail. You can't rewind a wedding. One other thing to keep in mind, most of your cameras can actually do dual recording. So if you have dual SD card slots, having the same storage media in both of them and setting it to dual record might help you out in case you're worried about media failing. So how do you choose? Well, choosing starts with your camera. Now check the manual for the media support and data limits. Like for instance, we're talking about the Fujifilm X-T4, 4K 10-bit, 400 MBS, needs a UHS-2 SD with 200 MBS sustained write speed. Now, a Sony a7S III, which is probably the most popular wedding filmmaking camera at the moment in 2025, at 4K 10-bit, 600 MBS, which is a lot. That's like the peak setting. I don't necessarily recommend recording that much data. Calls for CFexpress Type A. Or a 300 MBS SD. And this is the thing I think you're going to see a lot is you're going to see all these settings inside of your camera, and it might be grayed out depending on what media you have in there. The faster the media, the more options you're going to have. Just keep in mind, the higher up in the settings go, the bigger the files are. Now your settings matter, like I said. 8-bit 4K 30 FPS H.264, that's only 15 megabytes a second. 10-bit 60 FPS ProRes, you're topping out at 150 MBS. Now, test your setup. Slow cards crash under a load. If you don't have a manual, by the way, you can search this on the internet, but I really encourage you to look up your camera's media compatibility online and take it seriously. Match the performance to your budget and, of course, things like how much storage you want to have, and I think you're going to be good to go. So, guys, that's your roadmap to storage media, whether it be SD cards or CFexpress or SSD. What matters most is that you are shooting a beautiful wedding. Now, it's good to know your terms. You got to weigh your options and the size of the cards that you need. But at the end of the day, don't agonize over it, guys. If you can't afford to get the highest storage options, don't overly stress about it. You don't need to be recording at the peak settings on your camera. You don't need to, trust me. If it looks good to you and it looks good to your client and it saves you money on storage media, there's no shame in recording a lower bitrate codec or something like that. What matters the most is that you capture those memories. That's the most important thing. Hopefully this has been helpful, guys. Thank you so much for watching Wedding Film 101. Bobby and I can't wait to continue to show you awesome wedding filmmaking tips. Of course, check out our sister channel, The Old School, the original Wedding Film School. We have Wedding Film BTS and gear reviews, and as well as a bunch of other content, even some live streams. And if you're looking to learn about the business side of wedding filmmaking, check out the Wedding Film School Show, a podcast by myself and my business partner, Jared Haskell. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, drop comments below, do all the YouTube stuff, and we're gonna see you next time on Wedding Film 101.